You're live, Adam. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We do have Adam. He's a senior Southeast engineer manager when it comes to, um, he works for Proofpoint. He's going to do a presentation for us. Please, if you have any questions, remember, you can send it through the slide, the chat box down at the bottom, or you can also unmute your phone and try to ask him directly. Thank you, Adam. You're good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam, and as he said, please send any questions, comments, criticisms are not available, not able to go ahead and enter in there, but anything else is great. So today we're going to talk about a People-Risk Explorer, which is one of our latest releases. If anybody's not familiar with Proofpoint, we do people-centric security. So we started years ago in email security. We've gone into threat intelligence. We've branched out from there into some web technology security, cloud platform security, and we're really engaged in making sure that people are kept safe from all of the nation state actors out there, or hackers, or teenagers that might be in Eastern Europe just kicking back and setting some attacks to all of our customers. But today, I thought that this really requires us to kind of go back, and I'm going to show you what this solution is. But before we do that, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the threat landscape and some of the things that we're seeing out there today. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with Twitter. I think this one is just a couple of months old, but this was an alleged 17-year-old person from the United States actually got access to some celebrities' Twitter accounts, asking for money. I think we all heard of this, or should have all heard of this by now. But this is one where they are in jail. They did actually capture a few $100,000, so I guess that could be considered successful. But the beginning of this attack was really just that attacker calling into Twitter and somehow getting one of the Twitter employees to give them their email. I'm sorry, not to give them, to give them the super password for the celebrities' accounts. So it was super easy. It wasn't really breaking into any kind of architecture out there or infrastructure. It was simply gaining the trust of whoever's on the other line side of that. And we do see a lot of that, and we protect against a lot of that in email. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Phishing attacks. So everybody's heard of SurveyMonkey. Well, we've seen just recently that attackers are actually using SurveyMonkey to actually send out legitimate surveys. They're coming from a legitimate service, which is SurveyMonkey. And inside of those surveys, they're actually putting in their malicious links so that people can click on them when they're in there. Or they say, please keep the survey private. It's only for you, giving it a lot more legitimacy. And it says, please don't forward. And we see that there's a lot of people that are getting hit by this kind of attack. So that's out there. So it doesn't make us feel any better that now that we've gone off email into kind of clicking on web links and surveys, we're at risk there as well. Ransomware. So this has really popped its head up recently in the healthcare environment. And we've seen that hospitals have been hit. I've heard and have some terrible stories here. But really, there are some hospitals out there that all of the machines have been affected by ransomware that has locked them up, and someone owns the key. One of the problems out there is that we're seeing more and more amateurs get into the game and actually purchase the ransomware from the owners, which are the malicious actors or bad actors that could be anywhere in the world. But once they install the ransomware, once they get paid possibly for that ransomware, they are such amateurs that they don't really care about giving people access to their data again. Okay, so obviously that's not fun, and that's super dangerous. We saw this in community health systems was hit in the last month, and we had heard that it had affected some of their machines so much that people were actually writing prescriptions by hand, the outside of the bottle, where we all see that it's printed out, and it's a computer that kind of makes sure that the takes human error out of it. Well, they were putting a human error into it, and they were filling out those prescriptions, not only the bottles and what they're putting on them by hand, but then they were filling them by hand, and that caused, as you can imagine, quite a stir. This is another one, very public attack that happened to a very popular health service. So Garmin. They're the ones that make the GPSs. They also get into the health Fitbit, or I should say Fit or exercise watches. They were attacked within the last month and a half or so, and they were attacked so much with ransomware that everything was affected. Okay, so what I'm showing here on the left is really the platforms, and we've seen that people have said that everything internally as well as externally facing was affected. On the right side is the website. You can imagine how many people go out to Garmin, but if you had a golf GPS, if you had a watch, none of those things could check in and communicate with Garmin for about 5 or 6, 7 days. Some of the systems even longer than that, but everything was down. So Garmin obviously went to the FBI. The FBI has a pretty strict MO, and that is do not pay the attackers. Garmin said, well, our backups are unavailable, okay, or they've already been hit and we can't get to them. So they were kind of stuck, and they said we can either go on and erase everything and move forward, or we can go ahead and pay. So guess what? They took a chance and they actually paid. So the ransom was $10 million in Bitcoin. They did pay. It's argumentative if they actually got their data back. The FBI expects them to be a target again because of the size of the ransom, the size of the windfall for the attackers, but just simply the fact that they paid it. Now, one of the things that we've seen in the past is typically people that have paid ransoms and companies that have paid, they typically do get their data back. And one of the reasons for that is that if the attackers didn't give your data back, then immediately you take off to Reddit, LinkedIn, and all the other social media sites and tell everybody else, don't pay because I paid and the hackers didn't give me my data back. So, but based on what we've seen recently, some of these hackers are so amateurish, they just simply don't care. Or they don't have the expertise, or the people, the hackers where they purchased the ransomware in the first place are charging them again to get the decryption keys, for instance. And that's obviously a problem. So at some points, sometimes they just say, well, we're going to move on and we're not going to go ahead and help out the people that got hacked. So this was the community health systems that I just mentioned, and they were hit with an attack that actually affected 400 of their locations. One of the, terrible thing was 400 locations, but we had heard that this had affected some of the service, some of the machines that people were receiving healthcare from. And what's even worse is that we're hearing, and I just pulled this afternoon, so this is from today's headline, we're seeing more hospitals were hit by ransomware as they're warning about cyber attacks. There is an attack that is utilizing a piece of malware called Ryuk that has been, it's sent in different ways, but we haven't seen Ryuk specifically in email. What typically happens is that there's something else. There's another piece of malware, another piece of something that downloads or redirects you as you receive an email, redirects you out to the link on the website where you can actually download this Ryuk, and it will lock up your PC pretty effectively. So I had also wanted to include in here just really on, and this is terrible, but they said that, you could read this down here, but one of the things that stuck out to me, computers were inaccessible, halting radiation treatments for cancer patients. So you can imagine that, this is terrible, and it could be people's lives that are at risk from some of these attacks. So let's move on here. I kind of throw this up there and every now and then I like to just let people know that there are prices on the dark web for different pieces of information and personally identifiable attributes that we all have. So these are prices for things like PayPal accounts, credit cards, cloned visas with pins that, pretty inexpensive to get into the hacking game out there. There are some other things on social media. So hacked Twitter accounts, or even just the fact of purchasing followers. And sometimes what the hackers have done is they'll purchase 10,000, 20,000 followers for a page. That page then looks legit. They can start getting traffic and people to start getting to that page. And then they all of a sudden make it malicious whenever they feel like it and take advantage of the people that visit. So, and again, this is a global issue, obviously. So you can see that there are pieces of information that are for sale, not just in the US, Europe, China, Canada, doesn't really matter at this point. Is there is a piece of information out there. There is a price associated with it. Okay, so at Proofpoint, a quick glimpse of kind of what we've seen. This is a malware campaign threat landscape that we've seen in 2020. As you can see, there's a lot of things that make this up. I will say that about 98% plus of all the attacks and malicious coding or malicious threats that we've seen out there are based somewhat on social media or social engineering, I should say. So you're going to receive something from somebody you know. Maybe it's the person that you work closely with. Now we used to be in the cube next to each other. Now we're not. Obviously, a lot of people are working from home, but it could be somebody that's on your team. It could be somebody that's purporting to be your CTO or CFO and asking for information. But most of these are based on social engineering coming from someone you should know. And they also require you to go ahead and take some action. So these are not attacks that are just happening against your infrastructure in your company and something bad's going to happen. They do require you to go ahead and take some action, download something, click on something. We see a lot of blended threats now. So a very clean and safe link will come out. That link points you to another site that you'll be pushed to. That other site has a download on it. That download, once you have it, maybe it downloads other things and gives access to your PC. So there's all kinds of things out there, and as you can see, it's not uniform either. So attackers take off weekends typically. They take off summers. They take off time around Christmas time. So we see a lot of that, and most of these are actually attributed back to something major happening in the news, whether it's the U.S., the election, whether it's COVID-19. We've seen, I think it's a 3,500% increase in attacks using, during the COVID-19 pandemic, so in the last 8 months or so. But this is the thing that's constant here is that we're always seeing something. It's just not uniform exactly what it is at the time. And these campaigns that make up these, this chart here could be anything from 5 emails in a campaign that are very specifically handwritten and sent to certain people out there to other campaigns that are 5 million emails plus. Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit about what Proofpoint does. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on a pointer here, make it a little bit easier. So threat protection is the biggest thing. So we are in the, we're in the business of making sure that the advanced threats that are out there in the wild don't make it to our customers. Okay, they simply don't get through the gateways, and we keep people protected. We do it mainly for email. We are also getting into email fraud protection, which is a way that we can look out there globally and see who's utilizing your domains that you own. We can actually ask the ISPs to stop sending that email, and then we can take some legal action to go ahead and make sure that those whoever is using your domains and using it illegitimately, we can ask them to shut down. We can force those shut down, I should say. When we get into compliance, things like content capture across anything that employees are doing. So whether it's things they're doing in OneDrive, on the web, whether it's archiving of email, long-term storage, we do have a way that we can go ahead and provide the compliance there, as well as social media. So that we're not actually allowing employees to go ahead and post certain things. We're making sure that the content on those publicly facing sites stays publicly facing, and so it's not laden with curse words, things like that. Access protection. So we are making sure that when you reach out and try to click on things, or when you go through on the web and try to just go visit, whether it's your bank, whether it's Yahoo, check out the sports scores, whatever, we can do that safely. Okay, we do that a couple of different ways. With browser isolation, we're giving you access to a safe environment in your own browser. So you'll allow you to get out to your bank, but it might be hosted by us, where we can just show you that the site you're trying to get to, we show you exactly what the user experience would be for you or what you're expecting, but we're doing it safely. We're stripping away anything like HTML5, Java, the ability to go ahead and upload, download files. We'll be providing some data loss prevention through this. And then we're also making sure that when people are clicking on things, opening up different apps out there, trying to get to maybe corporate sites and databases or resources, and they're at home, we use zero trust network access. That allows us to make sure that very specifically we know who's going to have access to these certain corporate and non-corporate entities, even when we give them access to something like the corporate, the intranet. We use like VPN type technology, but we also go ahead and once they're on that internal network, we allow them to get to just the apps maybe that we want them to have access to. Information protecting, fully protecting information that you create. So when you have documents that are sitting on your computer, when you share those over OneDrive, when you send those over email, we can make sure that they are checked for maliciousness. We can make sure that they are encrypted. So if they've got things like social security numbers in there, we can make sure that on your cloud platforms that you don't overshare. So one of the things that we do at my company is we allow people to share things, but they're not allowed to share documents outside of the company. Well, that's one step towards security. I mean, it takes away a little bit from the convenience of sharing files. But the fact is that if our VP of HR sent out a CSV that had payroll information for everybody in the company and they shared it with everybody in the company, that's a bad activity as well. So we've got cloud security that will go ahead and look for types of things like that. In the pink here in the middle, phishing simulation and security awareness. And this I'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. But this is really making sure that as a next line of defense, your employees know that there are things that they shouldn't click on. They should ask twice or 3 times. If somebody asks for money, gift cards, things like that, maybe they should get some additional authorization. Pick up the phone. Line of sight authorization is pretty good, or was pretty good when we were all in an office. But this is where we just make sure that if anything does get past our other defenses, that the employees kind of know, hey, this is probably something I shouldn't get into and click on. And they can also report it, okay, through the product itself. So I've gotten into just a quick glimpse of what we do as a whole. I want to get into just a little bit more on some of the products that make up this People-Risk Explorer, and we are getting there, I promise. So when it comes to email, starting here on the left, we see billions of emails per day. On any given day, we at Proofpoint see 1/5 to 1/6 of global email traffic out there, okay? There is, and this is for a single customer of ours, but this is a typical email, what we call a funnel slide. So email comes in, we block things based on reputation. We also block things based on signatures or typical gateway things, like gateway security and protection that you would expect, like antivirus, anti-spam. Imposter is basically we can tell if somebody is sending email as someone else or trying to purport to be someone else in your company. Then we get into, on the dark blue here, Proofpoint tab. And this is our targeted attack protection. This is our sandbox. So specifically for attachments and URLs that we have never seen before, they're unknown to us at the time they come in, we will go ahead and send them to a sandbox. Okay, so the attachments, we try to detonate those. If they've got a password in there, we've got ways that we can attempt to open those files. We can't open 100% of them, but we try to get into those files. We try to go ahead and infect ourselves. With the URLs, we rewrite URLs on the way in, and it allows us to basically make sure that no matter who clicks on those, no matter where they click on them from, it's always going to come back to Proofpoint, so we can actually check that URL or that website at the time that it comes back in, okay? So it keeps people very safe. And then finally, I'll just show you right here what this looks like at the end of kind of, you know, funneling this out, culling out the bad stuff and the unwanted mail. At some point at the end, we get to a total of a certain number of emails that get delivered to users. Typically, this could be anywhere between 60 and 90%, or I should say between 10 and 40% that we will go ahead and allow. We block most email. This one I think is like 60%, give or take, that we are blocking for this customer. But this is one of the things that we do really well because our gateway for email will go ahead and block more than anything else out there, 67%. Now, our sandbox reporting will show us one of these things where this is based on just things that make it to the sandbox. We have a report that we call very attacked persons. Okay, so the VAP report. And this is going to show us of the people that are in your company, who's most attacked out there. And as you can see, I can see a number of people here. I can see that there's an attack index, which is going to show me it's a compilation of the source of the attack, the reputation of the sender, the volume of the attack, as well as the severity of the threat that's coming through. And I can see what they're attacked with. So this is pretty cool because we're protecting everybody, and it could very well be that 100% of what we see here has been blocked. But if we can show you who's most targeted in your organization, it's a better way for you to get a grasp on where do I need to go ahead and maybe set up some additional policies or rules and really provide some additional security for these people. And it may not just be 13 people. This could be a few hundred people. And it always, I should say, is tied back to somehow the attackers out there, they absolutely know that this person or the group that they work in is vulnerable. Okay, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But I can also see comparison with my company versus industry. So you can see here like industrial design, manufacturing, aerospace. We've got, I believe it's 22 different industries. And we can see, am I being attacked in accordance with what's happening within my industry or some other industry that I'm just curious about. But based on this, again, we can take some additional actions. We can set up some new policies. We can just make sure that these people are a little bit more protected than everybody else. And maybe one of those things is sending them to security awareness training. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But cloud protection, I talked about this a little bit. Our cloud analysis and security platform will actually protect you against a few things. So first of all, we want to make sure, and we're going to show you what we think are probable compromised accounts out there. Again, hackers are not trying to break into Salesforce.com or Microsoft or Google. They're actually sending a note out to 1 million people and basically just purporting to be somebody else, or very simply saying, hey, can you just log into this fake site? And I'm going to go ahead and steal your credentials and use it in the real OneDrive or the real G Suite site to log in. So this is kind of, some of the activity that we can see. Here are logins. This might be for the last 24 hours, so I can see where my employees are logging in from on the cloud platform. I also want to go ahead and make sure that not only on the logins, and we can go ahead and automatically take action to go ahead and block those logins, or if they've come in and we found out that it's an illegitimate account afterwards, we can force those out of the system immediately. But I also want to go ahead and look at the activities as well as the files. So what are those users doing after the login of the cloud accounts? So they've legitimately or illegitimately gotten into your cloud platform. Now, what are they doing afterwards? Are they downloading a bunch of files? Are they sharing a bunch of things? What we've learned is it's actually about 200 days between when an attacker breaks into a cloud platform and when somebody actually figures it out and kicks them out completely. Okay, so that should be scary to everybody out there. And then obviously, of course, we want to make sure that the data that's in those files that's being shared out there, not only is there nothing malicious in those files that's being stored, but also if you want to do some data loss prevention. So you want to look for things like driver's license numbers or social security numbers or credit cards. We can go ahead and do that. We identify it and we can go ahead and remove those. Okay. And as well, we make sure that there's no oversharing. So people aren't sharing things with anyone who has a link or anybody external. But at least we can bring it to your attention. So I'm going to skip through this pretty quickly, but this is some of the things that we're looking at with CASB or with cloud protection. So based on the role that people are, there are different types of risks that are associated with that. Based on the context of the location, the device, where they have access to and where they're coming from, that might also change the amount of risk that's associated with that user. We're going to come back to that in just a second with the People-Risk Explorer. Okay, last thing here is just another screenshot where I can see in the last 30 days, suspicious logins into my cloud platform. I can see failed attempts out there. I could drill into any one of these if I'm looking at the actual platform or console, I should say. And we're also going to be able to look at third-party applications that are basically allowed to get into and connect with the cloud platforms out there. So this would be something like, we can see that something like Evernote, where people will go ahead and install this. They don't really look at the permissions, but part of the permissions of Evernote is you're giving Evernote or the app access and the capability of logging in and performing some capabilities or some activities on your behalf. Okay, maybe it's sending email, but we want to alert you to that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at all the third-party apps that are connected out to your OneDrive. What we've seen, interestingly enough, here recently, I mean, there are, especially with people working from home, but we see like Amazon Alexas that people have hooked up to a work environment. And obviously that's something that you want to know about as well. So we just want to give you access to see what's going on there, and obviously some way to go ahead and proactively control it. So I want to talk a little bit about our security awareness training. Again, this is the next defense. So when things possibly might get past other defenses, and we're never going to be 100% in blocking all bad stuff that's going to, pointing towards your employees. Security awareness training is one of those things that we do. And it is basically just that. It's making sure that your employees are much more aware of what's happening out there. Okay. And we do it in a pretty fun way. So this is showing some of the videos out there that we've got. And this might be, if they click on something that they shouldn't have, we can pop up these videos and we can say, hey, Mr. Employee, Mrs. Employee, you've actually clicked on something you shouldn't have. We're going to show you why that was. And in the future, make sure you look for these couple of things inside of those emails. So we've got a bunch of these. It makes it very quick, very sticky, and very easy. Because we're doing this over email, also makes it really easy to go ahead and track. So we can see who has failed some of the trainings out there. We can see who has clicked on some of the trainings and who hasn't clicked. So we've got campaigns. These also reach, outside of email. We've got typical trainings that are instructors. We've got social media campaigns that we go ahead and help you to employ or deploy, I should say, as well as some hard copy things. So like posters that we are typically put around the office and let people know that, hey, we need to be careful out there, and we want to go ahead and make sure that people aren't just automatically clicking on things. Last year, there was a report that came out that said, I think it was 50% of people will click on 100% of anything that makes it into their inbox or in front of them. Okay, so we prepare for that. I mean, that is what we expect, and it's an uphill battle, but it's one that I think we're doing a pretty good job at. The other part of security awareness training is that inside of your emails, we're actually giving our customers a way that the employees can go ahead and they can actually click on a button and report those emails as bad. Okay, so they see something come in, maybe it looks bad, maybe it looks malicious, or it looks like a phish email. They can report it. It will then go back through the system, get reanalyzed, and if needed, it will get removed from anywhere in the organization that it's landed or been received. Okay, so this is kind of what it looks like. There's the button up top. And then I can go ahead and report the phish, and I get a nice little note that says, thank you for reporting this. It's been forwarded. And from here, it is an automatic process that will reanalyze it and possibly remove it from anywhere that it's landed. Okay, so I'm going to pause for just a second out there. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Adam. I'll probably want to say I have one on
Okay.
there. You just talk about that sometimes, once they identify the phishing email, you guys can go ahead and actually take care of it by removing it. So my question is, how long does it take for, say, an email that is supposed to be like a phishing email? How long does it take for you to be able to take it off so that it doesn't actually get to the next people around?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of answers for you, and let me try to be specific on this. There are times where we just simply miss an email. If we're looking at 1 billion emails a day and a handful get through, it's very possible that that handful includes something that might be actually malicious, okay? Let's assume that that gets delivered to any number of employees in an organization. As soon as we learn that that email is malicious, okay, it takes a few minutes for us to go back through the entire organization and remove it. And I say whenever we learn that because there are some times where we do click time analysis on some of the threats out there. So we're not going to learn about a threat because we've delivered an email that has a URL in it that's a very safe URL. The domain was created a week ago. There's no reputation for it. It gets delivered. It's going to go through just about any security system out there. We actually want to perform the security at the time that the user clicks on it. And the reason is because there's so many billions of URLs out there that on the way in, if we clicked on everything, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't, time frame wise, we wouldn't have enough time to go ahead and do that. So when we learn about it, could be 5 minutes after delivery, and it could be a year after delivery that somebody clicks on it and we learn that that's malicious. But there's one of the that's really one of the values of our cloud platform is that it makes it very easy for us that as soon as we see that patient zero, all of our other customers are protected within a couple of minutes. Now there's another scenario there. Let's say something does get delivered and an employee wants to click on this fish alarm button and report it as phish. Okay. So again, we haven't seen it. We haven't learned that it's a malicious email. When they report it, and that again might be today when it's delivered, might be next week, next month, but when they report it, we are actually going to go ahead and reanalyze it. Okay, we reanalyze it through a couple of different engines. And at that point, we will make a decision and then we can go ahead and remove it from everybody's mailbox. So does that answer the question?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Adams.
Sure. Any other questions out there before I move on?
Please remember you can send your question through the chat box, or you can unmute and talk to Adam directly.
Fantastic. I'm going to keep going here. So that was security awareness training. And very quickly, I'm not going to go through everything on here. Threat sim is threat simulation. This is a very safe way that we can actually attempt to fool and phish your employees. Okay. So what's nice about this is we will create these phishing campaigns based off of very real campaigns that we very recently see out there. So these are not something that we're saying, okay, this sounds good, let's go ahead and send this phishing campaign for the next couple of years. We are actually pulling very recent campaigns from the last couple of weeks or couple of months and saying, let's go ahead and send these out. And when we send these phishing campaigns, we're also going to see how many of the employees go ahead and fall for it. Okay, either they fall for it and click on a link that's in there, or they get to a safe website that's asking for their credentials, and we see if they fall for that and enter their credentials. But regardless, we can actually go ahead and make sure that they're continuously trained, that anybody that fails these tests can be pushed over towards some of the classroom, or I wouldn't say classroom because they're not actually sitting in a classroom, but can be over to some of the video content. And we track all of that and put it back into the system and consistently do those threat campaigns to see that and make sure that as a whole, the organization is actually getting better at responding to the threats out there. Okay, let's keep moving here. So the Nexus People-Risk Explorer, and I know it took us a little bit while to kind of get here. And the reason is because this is a reporting console that really grabs this information from 3 or more of the solutions that we already talked about. Okay. So we grab information from our sandboxing for email. So that's specifically very attacked and who's been very attacked inside the organization. We also grab information from security awareness training. And so that's basically how vulnerable is a person or how much training have they had so that we know that they're going to be ready when an attack comes. And then the last thing is how privileged is the person. And from our CASB or cloud platform security, we've also got some ties in to see like what everybody has access to. And it's not always the C-levels that have the most access. This could typically be maybe an executive admin. It could be maybe a DBA. It could be somebody that's working with the Active Directory and Azure group in the organization. But we want to take these things and basically show you the risk that's associated with users from these things so you can actually go ahead and plan for it. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second. And let me reshare. Sorry, it's taking me, maybe it's more than a second. everybody should be able to see my screen. Just a quick yes out there if you can.
Yes,
So,
sir. I can see your screen, Adam.
okay, thank you, thank you. So I don't want to keep going and I don't hear from anybody. Okay, so the People Risk Explorer is actually going to do just what we said it's going to do. It's going to take the compilation of, again, who's very attacked. And let me get my little pointer out. But who are the very attacked people that are consistently and currently being attacked? Who are the very privileged people here at the bottom that have access to the most important information? And who's very vulnerable? So maybe these are people that haven't taken all of the training that they should have. Maybe it's people that simply love to click on things, and we're tracking that type of thing as well. But now we are having a way to go ahead and look at the different parts of the organization and see kind of how we make this up with splitting this up into, you know, the very attacked, for instance. Let me click on this. And it's going to show me my very attacked people here. This will be analogous to looking at some of the lists that we have in our dashboard for our sandbox. But it's going to show me like who is being attacked, what is their risk right now, and the number itself doesn't really make a difference. It's where they are on the chart. So for instance, the fact that these people with 5.2 or 5.1 are at the top of the chart, they're the ones that I'm concerned with. Okay, I can see who this person is. So George is an account relationship manager or a service specialist. I can see that if I wanted to see what the imminent targets are or who the imminent targets are, I know that these are very attacked people that have access to, and I can see it right here, but they've got access to sensitive systems, privileged information, and data with a high level of technical or behavioral vulnerabilities. That really comes down to they're imminent, they're not ready for an attack, they're not as protected as they could be. And again, their risk is going to be associated here, it's going to be shown here, okay? Let me just scroll down just a little bit. Different pieces of this chart are going to show us, for instance, soft targets. These are actively attacked, low profile people, so they don't have full access or privilege to really important information. Major targets, typically these are the C levels. So these are going to be people that do have, that they are getting attacked actively. And you can see they have access to sensitive systems and with and noticeable vulnerabilities. And so it's really going to bring you to the next question, which is, what are those vulnerabilities? Okay. And I can come into the chart here and see the top vulnerabilities where I can see that maybe this is uncompleted or failed phishing simulations. Okay. Maybe this has to do with uncompleted password management training. This also could be that they clicked too much. Okay, or we've seen before that they click on all kinds of different campaigns that we've put out previously. And then of course, I want to do what's important, and we're automatically going to show you the recommendations out here for those users. So here, configure the cloud security adaptive access controls. So for these 25 people, and what that really comes down to is saying that configure so that when we see them on the cloud platform, and they click on links or open up files, we want to go ahead and make sure that the adaptive access controls, that's a mouthful, can actually take some additional steps of protection. So maybe we go ahead and block them from getting out into external web links, okay? Or maybe we push them onto our browser isolation technology, which would make their, anything they click on very safe. But I can see who the people are that have the same recommendation. I could go ahead and export from here so I can take care of these people at the same time. And then I'm going to go back here and I'll show you that for instance, with these imminent threats that we think are going to be attacked, or they're actively attacked, but we think are going to continue to be attacked in the future. I can see that, what the risk motion, this is, how are we doing based on compared to previous days. I can see those top targets. I can see the associated threats. So targeted attacks, exploited vulnerabilities. Maybe there are machines that haven't been updated with the latest Microsoft updates or otherwise. and a high probability of additional attack vectors. Now, the other thing that's interesting here is that the information here and the reporting only gets stronger as we add more and more things on here. So I mentioned before that we're only including email sandboxing as well as security awareness training and cloud protection. We've got probably 5 other technologies, including email fraud defense, which is looking for people that are spoofing emails. We're going to take that information and put that in here. We have a partnership with Okta, and we can take some of the information that we gain from here and actually do some automatic step-up authentication for those users. And it's really nice that it allows me, I mean, this is really what CISOs kind of, they love looking for, is the fact that they can go ahead and click on here and say, hey, who are my major targets? What is the risk? Who are the people in that group? And obviously, most importantly, I want to go ahead and say, what are the recommendations there? And then privileges. These are the privileges that these users have. So I can see who are the executives in there. Again, the fact that they're a VIP, we've chosen them as a VIP. We can create our own groups in here. So if we wanted to go ahead and set up something for not only latent targets or soft targets or people that we know are going to be attacked, we can have things like newcomers. I don't think this one populates, so I don't have anything here, but we can have people that are new to the organization, so that before they've even had a chance to go through some of the security awareness training or other training, or get aware of really what they need to be doing to keep themselves safe and their coworkers safe, we go ahead and put them into a group here and make sure that they are forced to go through some of that training before they have access to certain things out there. Here's where I can look at people by seniority. So executives, managers, other employees that for some reason are in this group, and they've got access to privileged information. And again, here, it's nice to know that every user in here, we're showing the overall risk based on their overall stance. So it's not just, are they the most attacked? It's not just how much information are they sharing out there on the cloud, but it's all of that put together with how prepared are they for any of the future and imminent attacks out there. So I'm going to pause once again, see if we have any questions out there. Okay, I don't know if we have any Proofpoint customers that are in the group right now. I would say that this is something that we had in beta. It is currently available in limited availability, and it's something that if you wanted to get set up with, I'm happy to go ahead and do that. But unless there are any other questions, I think that kind of takes us through, how we're trying to get into the risk. One thing I didn't show is organizational risk. So by the different groups inside of your company, I can go ahead and see who's most risky. And then of course, maybe I do want to work on the executives first. And it's identifying who they are. It's identifying what they have access to. And then taking the time to just say, okay, I want to go ahead and step up their authentication requirements, as well as their training requirements. Okay, questions on that. And I'm just clicking on a couple of different things. So you can see we can do this by country, by Active Directory group, by different departments in the organization. Okay, so I think that it's a mouthful for me, but we're just reaching 45 minutes. Unless there are any other questions, I want to thank everybody for joining me, and I'll stick around for a few minutes just in case something comes up.
Thank you. Awesome presentation, Adam. Thank you once again for your time. We do appreciate the wonderful presentation. And I just want to encourage our audience that just in case you want to reach out to Adam, you can actually reach out to him as well using his virtual launch. Adam, do we have a way to reach out to you at Twitter?
Yes,
Facebook?
so you can find me by searching for my name that's in the Zoom there. And I'm also going to throw in my email address into the chat.
Okay. And maybe if you have anything in LinkedIn or anywhere that you think is going to be helpful.
Yep, LinkedIn. You can look up Steigrod. I'm pretty much the only one in there.
Okay, well, thank you so much, sir.